There's a type of person society quietly praises, while slowly destroying them. The person who always says, "It's okay, I can handle it, don't worry about me." You see, it's the person who answers late-night calls, stays after work to help everyone else, and listens to everyone's problems. They forgive too quickly, they understand too much, and somehow, they become the one everyone depends on. But also, the one nobody protects. Because the people most likely to be used are usually the people least likely to complain. And the terrifying part is, most of them don't even realize it's happening. They think they're being loving, patient, mature, and strong. But slowly, their entire identity becomes built around making other people comfortable, even at the cost of themselves. And one day, they wake up emotionally exhausted, resentful, and invisible, wondering why nobody seems to care about them the way they care about everyone else. The people easiest to manipulate are often the people who learned that being needed was the safest way to feel loved. Psychologists call this pattern self-sacrificing behavior. And you see, it often begins much earlier than people realize. Sometimes in childhood. Maybe you grew up in a home where conflict felt dangerous, so you learned to stay agreeable, helpful, and easy to manage. Maybe love only appeared when you were useful, when you behaved correctly, solved problems, or made life easier for everyone else. And without realizing it, your brain formed a dangerous equation. If I disappoint people, I might lose connection. So now, as an adult, you struggle to say no. You over-explain boundaries, you apologize constantly, you feel guilty resting, and you tolerate disrespect longer than you ever should. And toxic people notice this immediately. Not consciously at first, but emotionally. Because manipulators are often drawn toward people who confuse kindness with self-erasure. It's the people who keep giving second chances, people who avoid confrontation, and people who would rather suffer quietly than risk disappointing someone. That's why some of the most emotionally drained people in our modern world are not selfish people. Actually, they're people who never learned that boundaries are part of love too. When someone feels responsible for everyone's emotions, they become vulnerable to people who never take responsibility for their own. The hardest manipulation to detect is not aggression, it's guilt. Because guilt makes good people betray themselves voluntarily, and it happens in our daily lives every single day. A coworker keeps dumping work on you because you're just better at handling pressure. A friend only calls when their life is falling apart, and a partner says, "If you really loved me, you'd understand." A parent makes you feel selfish for needing space, and slowly, you start carrying emotional weight that was never yours to hold. The problem is, empathetic people often see pain before they see manipulation. So instead of protecting themselves, they start explaining the other person's behavior. They say, maybe they're stressed, maybe they had a hard childhood, or maybe they didn't mean it. And sometimes that's true. But understanding someone's pain does not require sacrificing your own mental health. That's the line many people never learn. You see, therapist Nedra Glover Tawwab once wrote, "Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and myself at the same time. And without boundaries, kindness slowly turns into permission." Some people are not attracted to your kindness. They are attracted to your inability to stop giving it. One of the saddest psychological traps is this. People who are deeply empathetic often believe endurance is proof of love. So, they stay. They stay long after the friendship becomes one-sided, long after the relationship becomes emotionally exhausting, and long after respect disappears. Because leaving, it feels cruel. And people with strong empathy usually fear becoming the villain in someone else's story. So, they keep trying harder, communicating more, giving more, and understanding more. They keep hoping eventually the other person will notice, appreciate them, and finally choose them back. But here's the painful truth. Some people only love access. They love access to your energy, your attention, your emotional labor, and your patience. And when you finally stop overgiving, they disappear, which reveals something heartbreaking. They were attached to your usefulness, not your humanity. And for many people, that realization changes everything. The moment you stop abandoning yourself for others, you discover who actually valued you and who only valued your compliance. Being kind is healthy, but destroying yourself to avoid disappointing people is not. You see, real compassion includes yourself. Real empathy has limits, and real love can survive boundaries. And one of the biggest signs of emotional healing is learning that saying no does not make you cruel. It makes you honest. Maybe healing starts the moment you stop asking, "How do I make everyone happy?" And you finally start asking, "Why do I feel guilty for protecting my peace?" Because emotionally healthy people understand something important. You can care deeply about others without becoming responsible for saving them. You see, psychologist Dr. Gabor Maté once said, "When we have been prevented from learning how to say no, our bodies may end up saying it for us. And they say it through anxiety, burnout, exhaustion, and emotional numbness. Because the body often reveals what the mouth was too afraid to say. The people most likely to be used are not weak people. Instead, they are often deeply loving people who never learned they were allowed to protect themselves too." Maybe this is the hardest lesson adulthood teaches. Not everyone who needs you values you, and not everyone you love is entitled to unlimited access to you. Because if your kindness constantly leaves you drained, invisible, anxious, or emotionally abandoned, then it's no longer kindness, it's survival. And survival is not the same thing as love. You see, you do not have to earn connection by exhausting yourself. You do not have to become emotionally available to everyone just because you understand pain. And you do not have to keep shrinking yourself to avoid losing people who only liked the version of you that never said no. Because the strongest people are not the ones who tolerate the most pain. Sometimes, the strongest people are the ones who finally say, "This is hurting me, and I deserve better than this." Some of the kindest people in the world are exhausted because they spent too many years believing love meant sacrificing themselves to keep everyone else comfortable. If this video resonated with you, comment, "Boundaries," not to become colder and not to stop caring, but to remind yourself that protecting your peace is not selfish, it's necessary.